Welcome, Benzinga Nation. You know we love to cover the topics that are trending in sports betting. Esports and gaming is one that isn't just trending today. It's been trending for quite some time, which is why we're coming back with this event. And we want to get you insights, not just from executives from publicly traded companies, but also analysts and folks that are in the industry of entertainment, and also ones that are a part of making sure everyone is part of the story as well. So we'll talk to Ryan Johnson from Community. We'll talk to Greg Selko from XSET. But the one thing that I want to mention is that this trend is something that has been in the shadows for quite some time. It's been now in the public eye for quite some years. Now you have, channels like ESPN that go ahead and talk about gambling and spreads and odds and different things like that. Then you went ahead and now you have players, props that you can go ahead and bet on as well in terms of price picks and underdog fantasy. So there's a lot for us to cover here today. We're again going to talk to publicly traded companies, executives, analysts, and also CEOs of private companies as well. So in just a couple of moments, we'll go ahead and get things started, but feel free to kind of engage with us in the chat. Let us know what exactly is you want to know about in terms of topics, questions. If there's anything where you feel like, hey, I want to get some insights on a certain stock, we can possibly ask our analysts about that as well. And as always, we want you to go ahead and participate. Now, as we wait for our first guest, always, we want you to make sure that you gamble responsibly. So if you feel like you have an issue, a concern when it comes to sports betting and gambling, please make sure you dial 1-800-GAMBLER. We want you to be safe. We want you to be responsible. That is the number one thing that everyone should focus on when it comes to sports betting. So we want to make sure of that. Now, DraftKings is a company that had a nice little rise, and then it came back down a little bit, and now it's kind of struggling as there's a lot of competition. The margins are also impacted. There's so much money that is continuously bet offshore, illegally, in the underground world for various reasons that we haven't really captured the full market whatsoever. So a lot of great conversations to be had today. And I, again, thank you for hanging out with us. Chad, you can give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and we can go ahead and bring you on. Chad, welcome to the show. How's it going, my man?
Great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Absolutely. Doing great. And by the way, folks, that is Chad Beynon, who is the senior gaming, lodging, and theater analyst. Appreciate you for joining us again, man. Hopefully I got that last name right, by the way.
That was perfect. Really appreciate it. Yes.
I've been practicing all morning, so I appreciate it, brother. You and I had a great prep call, and I wish we could record that, but we'll kind of replicate the conversations here. Quickly, just kind of give us an overview of your background so the folks know what point of view you're coming from.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I've been a sell-side equity research analyst for 20 years. 17 of those have been in the gaming, lodging, theater space. So I've worked here at Macquarie for 17 of those years. And I also run the whole research department. So we cover about 35 companies. 20 of these are in the gaming space. So think, everything from DraftKings to Macau to Vegas to regionals to any new tech company that's coming live. And then we keep an eye on other companies in the space, whether it's esports or social gaming and different adjacency sectors.
Perfect. And of course, I know that since you mentioned you cover quite a bit of different stocks, we'll go ahead and put up your disclosure here in just a moment. So there you go. We'll leave it up for a few seconds so folks can read about it. Let's go ahead and now, I talked about the trends, right? You can bet on random things. You can bet on how long the national anthem will be at the Super Bowl. You can bet on the coin toss. You can bet on the outcome of the game, the spreads, the player props is what I want to focus on as well. But innovation, like what are you kind of seeing that's driving the growth in the sports betting industry right now?
Look, I think sports betting it's only 6 years old. So the apps that started here were somewhat clunky. We're seeing improvements on all the mobile apps. And there's new ones that just came out, right? So you just had Fanatics and ESPN Bet. They just launched in the past couple months. FanDuel, DraftKings, a lot of their competitors have improved. I'd say the major change that we're seeing is in-play betting, right? So you can actually stream some games on the app. And then you have other companies that are helping these B2C operators, and they're giving them more data, right? You have companies like Genius Sports, Sport Radar. They're collecting the data from the arenas, and then they're layering on other things. So on Amazon, if you watch Thursday Night Football, there's a couple different ways to watch it. One looks like you're watching Madden, and one looks like the regular broadcast. So little things like that, I think, are engaging. Consumers like it, right? There's different types of viewerships, and that's been a huge boost to overall engagement.
And, you mentioned, and you also have like Nickelodeon. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but that's Like a lot of people prefer SpongeBob and Patrick to commentate than, an Iron Eagle, if you will, or somebody of that, or Al Michaels or somebody. So it's interesting. And I think that's the great way to kind of capture the younger audience to get in the game as well, as viewership did suffer for quite some time. But thanks to Taylor Swift, we did see an uptick during the Chiefs run as well. What sectors, or I guess more importantly, what factors do you think are most important when you're assessing investment opportunities in the markets themselves?
Growth is definitely important, right? So you have sports betting growing roughly 50% in 2023. That's going to peter off a little bit just because we had a lot of new states. Same store growth is pretty strong. We saw that 30% in the first quarter. So I'd say growth is one of the things. Regulation and moats around that, I think, are very important. The way that licensing works in the US kind of restricts the number of players, right? So if it's a black market or a gray market, anyone can develop a site and try and work with the consumer. So that's the second thing. And then obviously valuation, right? Like you can't have valuations that are significantly higher than some of these high growth software companies. So yeah, I'd say growth, the business model, overall engagement, and then just investor appetite to learn about a new sector. I think that's helped with the sports betting. It's not this esoteric type of new thing that people are and I think that's been one of the issues with esports. The average investor who's investing or who's running one of these institutions, they might not be familiar with what esports are, but they might watch, Thursday night football, Sunday night football. So I think that helps as well.
Yeah, and then we've got a question from the chat, which I'll get to towards the end of the interview. They want to know thoughts on PENN and IGT. I'll get to that because you mentioned how you want to evaluate certain companies as well, and we'll put up the disclosure when we do talk about that towards the end. But you mentioned esports, something that I am a huge, huge fan of, involved in the industry as a broadcaster as well. I mean, we've got a $6.5 million tournament happening in Saudi Arabia. So, people talk about esports winter, but then you've got a $6.5 million tournament. I feel like that's really going to help elevate where esports can be, kind of like where it was during the 2020 era with COVID. That's what everyone paid attention to as well. But I don't want to just focus on esports itself, but also from the betting aspect. Do you feel like that's the next level of growth where we can maybe have some regulation around it and people can then now bet on their favorite players? Because we're in this creator economy, right? Influencers have more influence than say actors or actresses. So what are your thoughts on sports betting and esports and the intersection there?
Yeah, we've seen fits and starts with esports, particularly here in the United States with different, arenas or locations and kind of the business model that would be best for that sector. I think the restrictions right now is, one, it's obviously highly skewed towards younger audiences. So I think 90 or 95% of people are under the age of 42. So it's kind of very focused. In terms of betting, that's been something that has taken a little while, right? Maybe now we see more of this in-play type of betting that we see in sports betting kind of come over to esports. I think the game diversity is improving, right? Before it was just a couple major games. Obviously, Counter-Strike is 50%. It's also skewed a little bit more towards Europe. So what we've seen is cross-selling with esports makes a little bit more sense to soccer, to tennis, to NBA. Yeah. Esports players and viewers actually don't like betting on the NFL. So that's something everyone's trying to work out. But I do think eventually, if it's legalized in every state, we could see a tab on a lot of these apps that show esports, right? People were betting on ping pong and other, cricket and other sports we weren't familiar with during COVID. And that ended up being, 5 or 10% of the betting. Why couldn't esports be at that level? Yeah. And because of the prize pools, hopefully that helps viewership, sponsorship, similar to what we saw with the Kentucky Derby. Kentucky Derby's exploding. There's Japan, there's Japanese horses, there's European horses. The sponsorships are coming from all angles just because people are engaged.
Chad, during COVID, you kind of mentioned how other sports saw an uptick in sports betting. I mean, I had friends who were betting on simulations of video games where there's no human element to it, but it's just a computer versus computer. What's the outcome going to be? And you had bets on that. And I'm like, this is where we are. We thought we would see flying cars, but no, we're betting on AI versus AI. And I love the angle that you put, by the way. I didn't know this. I learned something new about how esports gamblers or bettors or watchers don't really bet on the NFL. So that's a very detailed insight that you have that I didn't know about. Now let me go to the question from the chat. and I'll go ahead and phrase this a little bit differently, but they want to know thoughts on Penn and IGT. And once again, we'll put up your disclosure so the folks at home know the standpoint of the company that you're representing, you as well. What are your thoughts on the stocks that are in the market, right? The companies that are in the market. Are there any that you like, that you don't like, that you're able to comment on? I want to respect the position you're in as well, but give us some thoughts, and if you can, on Penn and IGT included.
Sure. IGT, I'm unfortunately going to have to punt because of a role that our bank is playing in the merger with
Understood.
So I'm going right now. And then I can talk to the just overall background of that sector. Penn is one that is very interesting here. It received 3 downgrades by major banks in the past month. This is a stock, as a reminder, they did a deal, or they acquired the Score in Canada for almost $1.5 billion. They did Barstool acquisition for about $500 million. They canceled out the Barstool, and they just started the deal with ESPN Bet, where they're committed to spending about $150 million in advertising dollars. ESPN Bet has stock in Penn, and they also have warrants. So our position on Penn, we like it. We have a $28 price target. We think the value of the land-based business is worth about $20, and then the ESPN Bet deal was worth $8. Initial volume market share when they launched right around Thanksgiving in November spiked to around 10%, and that's come down as they pulled back on promos. But I think the app is getting better. A lot of our due diligence tells us that the app has really moved up in terms of the rankings. We're probably not going to see most of this impact until NFL. The schedule release came out last night, but that's not going to be until September. But since we saw 3 major downgrades on the stock, and the stock is kind of held in the $16 to $17 level, I think that's the floor. Obviously, the upside is coming from ESPN Bet, $28 price target. That could be higher if it's more successful. And then I'd say, just kind of switching gears back to the IGT. I can't comment on that, but the lottery business. IGT just reported earnings. The lottery business is very strong and stable. They gave guidance on their call yesterday. Other companies that participate in the space are good. And then their other part of the business is the supplier space. And from what we saw from their competitors, we actually like Light & Wonder, ticker LNW. They're scheduled to grow 10 to 15% per year. And that's mainly in selling slots, leasing slots, and having exposure to the iGaming industry.
That is awesome. And I'm writing those tickers down. You might not be able to see my right hand, but I'm writing down the last one that you mentioned there. So I appreciate the insight, and I appreciate you being upfront about things that you can and cannot comment about. Totally understand your position. Let's talk about some challenges, right? Legalization is absolutely one of them. I'm here in Georgia. You can't legally sports bet, which is why I have to go to Detroit to be able to do that, right? Where our headquarters is, thankfully. So the company can give you some perks there. But what are some other challenges that you're seeing for this industry?
I think regulation is the biggest one. Over 50% of the states have sports betting, but only 12% of the states have iGaming. So that's betting on slots, blackjack, baccarat, live dealer, which is kind of like, Price is Right, carnival type games, kind of like a Plinko type of game. So that's only legal in 12% of states. iGaming actually generates more than sports betting. So if we see legalization, 9 states talked about it last year. If we see some momentum there, after the 2024 presidential election, I think these stocks will run nicely. So regulation is one of these items. The second thing is college prop bets, right? This kind of became a hot button issue a few months ago. It sounds like something that could and should go away. It's only 1% to 2% of total bets, but we really shouldn't be putting these college student athletes in the position where they're getting feedback from people that lost wagers on how much that player scored. And then I'd say the last thing is really just around that mix between online and land-based. In the United States, only 10% of total gaming revenues come from online. You have other European markets where it's 40, 50%. So it's kind of that trade-off. We can't see much cannibalization for online onto land-based because land-based generates a lot of jobs, a lot of tax revenues. So that's where the regulators run into some of these friction points. But outside of that, really happy in terms of where 2023 finished, the growth in 24, and kind of the outlook going forward.
You mentioned the NFL side, the college football side of things, and absolutely, especially yes, you have the NIL, and yes, players are able to get some money for their likeness, but let's not pretend the offensive linemen who's no one's ever heard of, number 67, is getting any money compared to the quarterback, the wide receiver, or the running back. And they have a good amount of incentive to possibly let it, you know what I mean? Like, it's reality. So I'm okay talking about it with you, but like those are the type of challenges that we're going to have to see as well. Like at the NBA level, you've seen a player recently that was caught in a scandal and banned for life as well. So a lot of responsible betting, not just for the consumer, but also for the professional and the player on the other side to handle and behave in a certain way as well. Any final thoughts from me? I really appreciate your insights on this, but I want to give you the floor. If there was anything else that you were hoping I would ask you that I could talk to you about, the floor is kind of yours to talk to our viewers.
Yeah, thanks. I would say, DraftKings kind of set the tone. That stock was up almost 150% last year. It's up again this year. That's not the only way to engage in sports betting and iGaming. There's a lot of other names in the space that have exposure there that will, have similar type of growth. Regulation is the biggest thing, but we like the sector. We like what we're hearing from the consumer. It was a little bit weak in January on the land-based side because of some tough weather that we saw throughout the United States. But post Q1 earnings, which we're just wrapping up really today, I think the industry looks good and the valuations are attractive compared to historical levels and compared to other sectors.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight. Again, that is Chad Beynon, who is from Macquarie. Did I pronounce that correctly? Hopefully I did. Hopefully Benjamin doesn't email me later on, but
that's great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time and insights. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Likewise.
Take care. Look, I hope you guys got some insights there. I know he dropped some insights on Penn, DraftKings, and other tickers as well. And this is why we love having you in the chat, be engaged, so we can give you color commentary on the stocks that you care about. And of course, you have to respect the position of legality so that, they can speak on what they can speak on and they can't speak on what they can't speak on. So we appreciate you, chat, for being active and engaged as well. Let me go ahead and bring on my man, Chris, because he's got a great interview coming up with Joey, who is the CEO of Betr, a company I'm sure you've heard of, a lot of great traction that is on social media. Chris, what is going on, brother?
What's up, Z? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I know you've covered sports betting from a editorial aspect of it as well. Before I turn it over to you fully, my man, what are your thoughts on this industry here?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. Full disclosure, I'm one of those guys who bets on sports, does the daily fantasy and everything. So I love hearing, what these companies are doing to grow, to acquire new customers. And, it's a market with a lot of players. So there's always a lot to talk about. We've seen a little bit of, M&A in the sector, and I think that might continue in 2024 and 2025.
Should be a great, the prop betting space. I mentioned it earlier to start the webinar. I recently just signed up for a Underdog Fantasy account. So as soon as I get my verification done, I will be working overtime here for obvious reason. But I know you've got a great interview coming up, Chris. Go ahead and tell us about it. I'm going to head backstage.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. I am super excited. We are welcoming back to Benzinga Joey Levy, the CEO and co-founder of Betr. It's one of the newer sports betting companies, micro betting. They also lead the way in sports betting media. So super excited to hear from Joey again today and dive into what the company's up. Joey, how's it going?
Good. Appreciate you guys having me on, and good to be back.
Awesome. Well, welcome back. And Joey, I know we have limited time, so I want to dive in. And I was just talking to Zunaid. I'm one of those guys. I bet on sports. I do the daily fantasy. I do the fantasy football. Talk to us about Betr Picks and how that kind of combines all those elements of betting and the fantasy element. What is Betr Picks, and what are some of the levels of success you're seeing with that segment?
Sure. Yeah. Betr Picks is a skill-based fantasy sports product that is currently available in 24 states plus DC. We plan on expanding that state footprint ahead of this upcoming NFL season. And really, it's a pretty simple product where you're picking more or less on particular player stat categories and creating a fantasy lineup that will pay you if you get all, or in the case of dynamic play, which is another game mode we have, in that case, you could get paid if you get some of those right. So, and then the more lineup selections you ultimately put into the contest, the bigger the payout will be, because obviously the lower probability of that outcome is. Yeah, I mean, we've been making real inroads with this product experience. I heard before coming on, Zunaid was, downloading Underdog Fantasy. I would encourage you all to give Betr Picks a shot as well, because we launched this product just ahead of the last NFL season in September of 2023, so only about 8 months ago. I think it's pretty clear at this point that despite only being less than a year old with this product, we're already in the top 3 or 4 in terms of the other fantasy operators. Of course, the other ones being, Underdog and Prize Picks and Sleeper to some extent, who is focused historically more on season-long fantasy, but has been getting into the fantasy pick'em category as well. And we're seeing pretty remarkable traction, really, really strong unit economics, and we're getting to a point where this business is reaching a nice level of scale, really an unprecedented level of scale, given the time that we've been in market, with great unit economics, and we're able to grow very quickly, but also have but do so in a profitable manner, right? We're doing it very efficiently, really tight payback periods on the new user acquisition investments we're making. And the reason why we're seeing this is because our product experience is considerably simpler and more intuitive, with a more modern design aesthetic than I would say anybody else in the category. And that's really resonating with this incremental TAM of casual fans, which is really what we're building our business around. And then, of course, the Betr Media angle, which is very unique to Betr as well, where we are, I think at this point, running laps around the competition with respect to building this viral content machine, where day in and day out we're generating dozens of original short form videos that consistently go viral on the internet, result in unfair brand awareness, but also unfair brand affinity, as we're really differentiating our content approach and ultimately creating this brand halo effect that is enabling us to have unfair customer acquisition economics in this category.
Let's stay on that media side for a minute. I'm seeing some of your competitors in the space, your sports betting companies, kind of turn to the media element now, right? Doing it backwards of what Betr did. Why was it important when you launched Betr to kind of coincide the media angle with the sports betting angle at launch?
Yeah, I think we had a couple of just embedded unfair advantages. Obviously, I've been in the sports gaming business now, despite being a young entrepreneur. I've been in this for a decade now, since I dropped out of Columbia about 10 years ago to start one of the original fantasy sports startups. But I started this business with Jake Paul, who is a media mogul in his own right, and arguably the most successful marketer on the internet. So I knew that we had these unfair content creation capabilities from day one, and I wanted to build a media engine around him from day one. And very happy with that decision. We launched Betr Media just about a year and a half ago. We're already the #1 sports gaming brand on TikTok, and that doesn't just include the fantasy sports operators like Prize Picks and Underdog, or the sportsbook operators like FanDuel and DraftKings, but it also includes the sports gaming focused media companies that this is their bread and butter, like BR Betting from Bleacher Report and Action Network, who, as was acquired for $250 million a couple years ago by Betr Collective. So we're really and the reason why we care about TikTok, and you could think what you want about them, but what nobody can deny is they are the best platform for rewarding high quality original short form video content. So we're validating just an unfair advantage in terms of breaking through the noise in this category, which, as there's billions upon billions of dollars poured into user acquisition in this category on an annual basis, and we're spending a very, very, very small fraction of what our competitors are spending, and yet we're breaking through the noise a lot more effectively than most of them, and it's really resulting in just totally unfair customer acquisition economics for our gaming business. Because having been in this industry for a while, I know that customer acquisition is the predominant expense for a direct to consumer operator in this category, and we needed to have some sort of moat around how do we scale up a strategy that will enable us to compete with the big guys without spending nearly as much as they do. And it's just resulted in phenomenal unit economics for our business.
Awesome. So we talked about Betr Picks. Let's turn to the sportsbook side. You guys launched, the micro betting platform, and you have a new version you're hoping to roll out before the NFL season. Tell us about some of the changes on this new sports betting platform that users and new users can expect.
Yep. Yeah, very, very excited about the launch of our new sportsbook platform, which remains on track to happen ahead of this upcoming NFL season. So we're only a couple months away now. For more context on this, we, for a variety of strategic reasons, wanted to launch our existing beta product in a couple of states before getting into the fantasy sports vertical. So we've had a beta product live in a couple of states, but we have spent $0 on new user acquisition behind that, because we knew that we ultimately wanted to deploy capital against a full turnkey sportsbook platform. Just given you have a greater breadth of content that you're able to monetize against. So last summer, as part of our Series A2 round of financing, we acquired the Chameleon platform from Fans Unite, which has given us full turnkey sportsbook capabilities, and essentially over the last 12 months have been really significantly enhancing that platform, building our bespoke UI UX on top of it, integrating new feeds that provides even more content than they were previously able to handle. So what you can expect ahead of this NFL season is that Betr will not only demonstrate an ability to compete with unfair unit economics in fantasy with Betr Picks, but we will begin demonstrating to the marketplace that we can compete in sportsbook when we start allocating new user acquisition dollars behind it, because the product we're going to roll out, it may not have all of the content that a FanDuel and DraftKings have today, but it'll have the table stakes set of content that users have come to expect. And we are deliberately focused on that because we think that there's you sort of have this 80-20 dynamic here, where there's a key set of content that the user really cares most about when it comes to the sportsbook product experience. So building the best, most robust user experience around that core content is what we ultimately decided to prioritize. And I think it'll be by far the most simple and intuitive product experience that anybody has ever released in sportsbook. I think you may know this as part of our background, but I got involved in all this because I remember when I first picked up a sports book, I didn't understand what a -175 money line meant, what a +5.5 point spread, what a 49.5 O/U. And I didn't understand why sportsbooks felt like interacting with a spreadsheet instead of an entertainment product. So those are the problems that we're focused on solving, with really the objective of capturing this incremental TAM. FanDuel and DraftKings today combined for about 7 million monthly active users, yet they're in front of over 100 million gambling age sports fans. And I'm not saying all of that incremental 93 million should be in this category, but there's a world where there's 20 to 25 million monthly active users, and the key to unlocking them is building a simple and intuitive product experience that anybody could just pick up and interact with. And that's what we're looking to accomplish on the sportsbook side. And this time we'll go to market with a product that pretty much has most of the content that users will come to expect. And we have a plan to rapidly improve this product experience over time. So we're very, very excited to get this product out, and we'll have a business that is generating significant revenue with Betr Picks, is validating our ability to compete with Betr Sportsbook, and then later over the next year or so, we plan on launching Betr Casino, where we have already publicly announced that we've secured market access for iGaming in Pennsylvania, in addition to securing market access for sportsbook in Pennsylvania as well. So we'll have a pretty diverse revenue mix across the three gaming verticals over the next over the coming years.
Joey, remind me and our viewers, what states is the sportsbook currently in, and what states will you be in by the end of the year for the sportsbook?
Yeah, so the beta product is currently live in Ohio and Virginia, and those will be the two initial states where we launched the new sportsbook platform. And then we have market access in 5 additional states, which include Indiana, Colorado, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and we're applying for a license in Maryland, where we hope to get the honor and privilege of a license there, as well as these other states that I alluded to. And really, we're going to take a pretty methodical approach on the sportsbook side of things. We already have nationwide coverage with Betr Picks. So on the sportsbook side, we're going to methodically roll out the sportsbook platform in a manner where we're looking to get to profitability on a state-by-state basis, where we're able to pay all of sort of the operating expenses and minimum guarantees that come with market access in each of these states before expanding to new states. The 7 states I just described represent 17% or so of the US population. So there's enough of a TAM there to invest into those states to get to profitability on the sportsbook side. And then we'll bolt on incremental states as we go forward, while really just continuing to fortify our balance sheet and acquire, continue to acquire hundreds of thousands of paying customers through Betr Picks. And I think we've already publicly announced we already have hundreds of thousands of paying customers through Betr Picks, despite launching that product only 8 months ago.
Joe, you mentioned Jake Paul earlier. He's one of the co-founders of Betr. He's been on Benzinga before talking about the company alongside yourself. I know he's currently busy training for a small little boxing match against some guy named Mike Tyson. And a couple people mentioned that in the chat. How is Betr leveraging this upcoming massive fight that's on Netflix that everyone's talking about? What are you doing to help bring in customers alongside his fight?
Yeah. I mean, Jake and I are both the largest shareholders of this business, and we're building this thing alongside one another. And every step Jake takes to elevate his cultural relevancy and mainstream, his ability to really break through the noise and establish himself as like a bona fide mainstream cultural figure is great for Betr, right? So there's a variety of different ways we plan on taking advantage of the event that really is a first of its kind event that Jake and Nikisa Badarian, who's his co-founder at Most Valuable Promotions, the two of them, what they've been able to pull off with Netflix and with Mike Tyson is pretty remarkable for not just themselves, but for Netflix and the future of live sports streaming and the future of boxing as well. So we'll be there at the event. We're going to have, essentially our entire media team creating content in the lead up to the event. Betr, co-owns BS with Jake Paul, with Jake, obviously, which is, Jake's flagship long form premium IP. And he's going to be, continuing to release the podcast ahead of the fight. So if you want to hear from Jake, about everything that's sort of on his mind ahead of the fight and after the fight, I encourage you to tune into BS with Jake Paul, which is available on YouTube. Actually releasing an episode today with Ryan Garcia, which I'm sure is going to do pretty well from a viewership perspective, given there's a lot of sort of attention and speculation around him right now, after that fight that he won against Devin Haney. So the broader point here is when Jake wins and when Jake succeeds, it's great for Betr, right? Because we are right there with him. Having a brand here that, on the media side, we only launched a year and a half ago. On the gaming side, only launched 8 months ago. Yet, we're breaking through the noise in a way that a lot of the tier 2 operators who are investing hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis on customer acquisition are not capable of doing.
Awesome. Well, Joey, I think we're out of time. I know I got more questions for you, but we'll follow up offline. And I got to tell you, Zunaid has been listening in the background, and shame on him for Underdog. He did tell me that he signed up for Betr Picks, deposited some money, and got that match. So he's excited to start with Betr Picks.
There you go, man. Appreciate the support and yeah, great chatting with you, Chris. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Joey. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Take care.
All right, guys. Well, there you go. You heard from Joey Betr. We'll turn it back over to Zunaid here.
Right here. Wasn't kidding either, right?
Oh,
so money's
he's
in the
got
bank.
the proof on
I got
the
proof.
screen.
I've got proof. We don't BS around here. Now, look, tomorrow morning it may not be there, but it's there for now. We'll see how tonight's Nuggets game goes. But no, it's really cool, right? And this is why we kind of bring on executives like Joey to kind of learn about, hey, what is going on behind the scenes? We got a chance to learn about the iGaming and how they've already got some things in the works in Pennsylvania as well. So it should be fun. And the fact that they're looking to vamp up their sportsbook side of things before the NFL, which, look, who doesn't love teasers that cross zero? Don't do that, by the way. Not the best betting advice out there. But no, man, I love this space. You love this space. Great interview. Appreciate you for hopping on.
Thank you, Z. Have a good one.
You too, my man. And thank you, Joey, for coming on and giving us some of your time. Now, earlier when I was in Detroit, yes, you'll notice me wearing a different shirt. I got a chance to catch up with the CEO of gambling.com. Check out that interview. Joining us is going to be Charles Gillespie, who is the CEO and co-founder of gambling.com. Ticker on the NASDAQ is GAMB. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Junaid. Very happy to be here.
I am excited to talk to you. There's so much happening in the gambling world right now. You've got the playoffs of the NBA and the NHL as well. But before we dive into all good things in the gambling world, give us a quick overview. What is it that your company does and the purpose and the mission behind it?
Yeah, sure. So gambling.com Group runs a portfolio of consumer-facing websites that help people get educated and informed about everything to do with the online gambling industry. Most importantly, where it is that they can actually play. In the US, regulations are changing every day. More and more states are opening up for both sports betting and online casino games. And it's not terribly clear, which operators, which online gambling companies are available in each state. You've got the DFS guys, the DFS 2.0, if you will, out there as well, and a lot of options. So we help people sort through all that. We've got gambling.com, of course, our namesake. That's our flagship website. It's available around the world, not just in the US. But then we've also got casinos.com, bookies.com. We bought a little company called rotowire.com a couple of years ago, which is, the original authority in fantasy sports in the US.
Yeah.
And a number of other properties.
Yeah, and I've used your website, right? Because I'm here in Detroit at our headquarters, and I needed to know if I'm going to stay at a casino hotel that the company is going to pay for, I might as well have a good time. So where do I need to be? So definitely am familiar with your website. Give us the insights, right? You talked about, hey, not just because of regulations, but just because of innovation, things are changing as well. So share your insights in the ever-evolving landscape of online gambling.
Yeah, from a business perspective, this industry has been around for 20 plus years. It's not a new industry at all. It is, however, a new industry in the United States because the US was very late to the party to regulate the industry. UK has had online gambling for they regulated in 2005. There's a lot of markets across Europe which have been regulated for some time. There's a lot more availability of these online casino games outside the US as well. So it's a global industry, but the center of gravity really moved to the US in 2018 with that Supreme Court decision, which really unleashed the wave of regulation that we're all still watching unfold now.
Now, when it comes to innovation and the online gaming aspect of it, what do you kind of see coming up in the future, right? So I talked about Price Picks with you before we went live and how that is something that isn't exactly new. You mentioned Roto that kind of created that, but it's taking off, right? So I can bet 20, 30, 40 bucks on my phone within 10 seconds. What do you kind of see driving the future of online sports betting and its intersection with online gaming itself?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think everyone in the industry is trying to figure that out. These DFS 2.0 companies are driving a lot of innovation in the space. It is a product that people really like and engage with. Young people in America grew up with fantasy sports and they're used to betting on individuals, not necessarily, the spread before the match. So it feels like a much more kind of culturally appropriate product in many respects. But at the same time, it's not as clear of a regulatory situation. There's a bit of a brewing spat between some of the kind of old guard, fully regulated tax, paying gaming duties, the big operators we all know, like the FanDuels and DraftKings of the world, and some of these new upstarts, which at the moment have a bit of a regulatory advantage. And I think it's not a particularly fun or interesting area of innovation, but I think that's an area that's going to get ironed out in the next couple of years. But it's a product people like, so I don't think it's going anywhere. I think there'll just be some clarifications of how it all is supposed to fit together.
No, I agree with you 100%, because look, the stock market, normal hours close at 4, after hours at 8 o'clock, 8:01. I'm trying to figure out how to sports bet and, get my players locked in. So I 100% agree that it's here to stay. And there are a lot of people that are involved in it. One word you mentioned, I think, is interesting, and it was regulatory, right? And you're leading in this space, so you know what's going on. What challenges do you kind of see for the industry? Is it just regulatory regulations, or something else on the horizon as well that you're kind of keeping an eye on?
The industry's got an enormous number of tailwinds. This has got a very long way to go, especially in the United States. But from the regulatory perspective, I think a lot of people are focused on excessive advertising at the moment. We've seen this for years, right? It started back in the day with the DFS companies.
Yeah.
And, it's frankly just continuing now. So some of these new states in particular where sports betting is just launched, like North Carolina, it can be kind of overwhelming, the amount of advertising that you see on TV, radio, outdoor, advertising, which is in your face and kind of hard to avoid. So I think the whole industry is starting to ask more serious questions about what level of advertising is appropriate. And I think the industry understands that if there's too much advertising, it's net negative, right? It annoys people, and there could be a change in perception of the industry, which obviously is not in the industry's best interest. So from our perspective as publishers of content about the industry, we're all for it. We think people should rein in this kind of more aggressive forms of advertising that are hard to avoid. Whereas, what we do is not really in anyone's face. Most of what we do, it's serving content to people that are actively looking for it. They have a question, they've gone to a search engine, they've searched for it, and they've found one of our websites, and we're helping them, fill in the blank on something that they're curious about. So, the companies that do what we do really aren't the problem. We actually can help the online gambling operators acquire players in a more elegant way without having to blanket everyone with advertising.
Yeah, I mean, you're to me, I see y'all as kind of like the maps, a GPS, where it's like, hey, here's what I want to do, here's where I want to go, and you say, all right, cool, based on what you want, here's what we would recommend, suggest based on 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z. We talked about the challenges. Let's talk about some assets when it comes to data and AI and how it's going to play a role in the future of online gaming, both from a business standpoint, but also a consumer standpoint as well. What are your thoughts there?
I think the picture's a lot clearer on the cost side than it is in terms of product innovation. These AI tools can help automate all sorts of customer service. It can accelerate programming, development of new products. You can take a lot of cost out of these businesses with this stuff. Is it going to help us design cooler products or the next wave of innovation that actually touches the consumer? It's certainly going to enable experiences which weren't technically possible. Maybe it'll allow us to offer more in more unique markets in terms of ways to bet on individual events or individual players. But I think anything's possible. It's one of these technologies which is moving at an exponential rate. It's not linear. It's exponential. So a couple of years from now, it's going to be a brave new world.
And, I think data analytics and AI is huge because like something I used to love betting on, 8 years ago or so was which NBA team is going to score the ball first. So I had to look at, well, who wins the jump ball, right? And that is a huge advantage. If you have someone who's taller and can jump higher, you're going to get the ball first. Chances are you're going to score first. So like those are the nuances that you have to try to understand. And that's where data and AI can kind of come into play.
For sure. I think in terms of sports betting systems, the sky's the limit.
Yes.
A lot of people are, people make money betting on sports, right? It's not that the house always wins. The house wins most of the time, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry because of that, but not all the time. And around the world and some of these markets where sports betting has been more historically prevalent, you practically have like hedge funds that bet on sports. Extremely sophisticated shops with bleeding edge data analytics that have been using machine learning AI for years to identify correlations and patterns that are not obvious.
Whether it's the stock market or the sports betting, that 3-4% edge can make a huge world of a difference when it comes to income and cash flow. I'm still working on becoming the next Billy Walters, but let's move on to something more realistic. And that's kind of looking into the future. Last question for me. What excites you the most about the future of online sports betting, the industry, and just, again, its intersection with online gaming? Looking ahead, what excites you?
I think it's just going to get so much bigger than it is already. If you look at some of these European markets, 80 or 90% of the gambling market in some of these European countries is online. Okay. Yeah. And if you look at the US, I think the figure's about 10% for last year. Now, of course, we've got Las Vegas, right? It's not a fair comparison, but the potential for that to increase very substantially over the next 10, 20 years is clearly there. And I think the direction of travel is only one way, and as big and as interesting as this industry already is in the US, it just has so much further to go.
No question about it. Charles, thank you so much for the conversation, man. Always love talking sports betting, and I really appreciate your time here today.
My pleasure, Zunaid.
Take care. All right. And that was, again, make sure you check them out, by the way, gambling.com. Anything you want to know about in terms of where the best place is to place the bets, the odds, what's happening in the industry itself. They're kind of like your price line for gambling, aka gambling.com. That's why they kind of own it. But Chris, let's go ahead and chop it up a little bit more before we get to our next guest. What do you think about, apps such as Betr Picks, apps such as Price Picks and their competitors as well? Because now I feel like folks aren't really trying to predict. And you can tell me what you try to do, but I don't think folks are trying to predict the spreads, the money lines. They're trying to predict, I don't care if my favorite team is down 30, as long as my player gets 7 points.
First, I can't believe you changed your shirt so fast. Second, I've talked to DraftKings CEO before, and one of the comments that resonated with me, Zunaid, was talking about the Super Bowl, right? And years ago, it used to be the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Oh my gosh, the sports books are going to get crushed. But instead, it was, will Travis Kelce score a touchdown? That was the betting item that could have broke the sports books on the Super Bowl. So he said it didn't even matter which team won. It mattered if Travis Kelce scored a touchdown. So I think you're spot on. I mean, we're betting on players now more than the outcome. I mean, look at WNBA the other night, right? Caitlin Clark. So much money was bet on Caitlin Clark player props, more than I think like the entire WNBA playoffs of last season. So players are definitely a huge determining factor now.
Yeah. And, it's interesting you mentioned that because the WNBA, not only did they see high viewership for their draft, right? Not only were there record viewership is a term I was looking for, but now you've also got, got a great Nike deal for her. You've also got a Nike deal for, I believe, another player on the WNBA as well, Ms. Wilson. Is it Aja Wilson, I believe, who got another Wilson, deal? Yep. Thank you. So, we're seeing a trend there. And this also can have, we're a male-dominant industry in terms of sports betting, in terms of finance, right? That's just speaking facts in terms of the corporations that are released as publicly available information. However, with the WNBA now getting the traction that it rightfully deserves, you might also see women be a part of the betting world as well, because who doesn't want to throw a few bucks where Taylor Swift's favorite boyfriend can score a touchdown, right? So I feel like we're in the early innings, right? Is the best way that I can put it. And sports betting in general, I think, has such a long way to go that if you don't really know which companies to bet on, no pun intended, in terms of stock market and invest on, there are ETFs out there that you can go ahead and diversify so that no matter which company does well, as long as the industry does well, you will do well as well. That's a lot of wells.
That was a lot of wells. Yeah. The Roundhill sports betting ETF bets, BETZ, is the one that comes to mind. Also Flutter, right? Uplisted to the New York Stock Exchange. It used to be if you wanted to get exposure to Flutter, which owns FanDuel, you had to go OTC. Now you can, buy those shares directly on the New York Stock Exchange. So there's lots of opportunities for investors, along with us bettors, right, Zunaid? So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Speed is such a big thing that comes to mind for me because injuries are a part of the game, unfortunately, right? So this NBA playoffs, for the folks that might be following at home, you had Michael Conley that couldn't play the last game. Donovan Mitchell has missed 2 games. Josh Giddey was benched, right? So these are things that kind of impact the markets in an instant, and you got to be quick on the better side to go ahead and take advantage of now the misprice that's being offered. But then on the other side, the sportsbook side, you got to make sure that you are fast enough to get the news and adjust your lines or take them off so that, you don't get taken advantage of as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing we're seeing right now. The NFL schedule came out last night, right? And one of the things people immediately did was looked at the week 1 lines. And it's like, okay, where is there a misprice on a team that maybe is going to start out the season well? And some of those lines get hammered. And then, you look at the over-under on win totals now, right? Based on, who's playing back-to-back games in London, who's playing a Monday night game and then turning around and playing, a Thursday or a Saturday night game. So all kinds of information out there, injuries, schedules. I mean, it's so important to try to give the edge to the better there.
And I kind of speak from experience before we move on to our next guest. It was Antonio Brown. That was just signed with, with the Tom Brady, right? Down at Bucks, or I think it was Bucks. I think it was Tom Brady that got signed, or it was Antonio Brown that got signed. It was one of those, but the odds were out there for how the Bucks will finish in the NFC South. And of course the odds weren't great, right? Because you had Saints kind of dominating there. My beloved Falcons, 28-3, still hurts my heart every morning. And so as soon as that news came out, the sports books weren't able to kind of adjust properly, and you were able to kind of take advantage. But Jordan, give me a thumbs up. I'll go ahead and bring you on. But Chris, thank you so much for your time, man. Always appreciate chatting it up with you, pal.
Thanks, Z.
Absolutely. You bet. We'll go ahead and get this party rolling. Next up, we've got another analyst with us. It's going to be Jordan Bender. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. There's so much for us to talk about. So let's kind of dive right into it. Sports betting, gaming, and esports, right? That's part of the conversation here today. When it comes to sports betting, especially with the background that you have, right? The extensive experience that you have in the gaming sector as well. How do you kind of see growth in terms of what's moving on in the sports betting and gaming world itself?
Yeah, so it's been a super.
Looks like we are going to quickly see if we can get that issue fixed. Chris, you can go and come on back with me. But Chris,
of it yesterday,
you're good.
We came up on the 6-year. We came up on the 6-year anniversary of it yesterday. And, over that time, we've had a ton of legalization, especially on the sports betting side, with over 50% of the U.S. population now having access to online sports betting, and actually only about 13% with iGaming. So that's tables and slot machines on your phone. And, over this time, we've seen a massive expansion of growth from these states. We still have some of these legacy states that are growing gaming revenue, 10, 15, 20, even 30% last year. So, when we think about the path forward, we have all of these states that have legalized and that will continue to grow off of, a pretty strong revenue base. And then we should see some more incremental legalization going forward. States like Missouri and Georgia still don't have sports betting. And those are states we look to kind of grow the overall size of the pie in the coming years. So, from a market perspective, we've seen a huge boom. And from an operator perspective, a DraftKings or FanDuel, they're building up their platforms as well. They're growing with the market. And then, more recently, it's been about how can they take kind of this market size and drop, handle or the amount you wager all the way down to profitability at the most efficient rate. So it's about building technology, building product, giving the end user, the consumer, what they want. And that's really where we're going to see the growth moving forward.
You mentioned the technology side of things, which I'll get to in a second, along with AI and blockchain. But I want to talk about DraftKings and FanDuel and the competitors that have come back from the dead, if you will. Or you have Price Picks and Underdog Fantasy. You have Betr that we just had Joey, the CEO, on earlier today as well. And I was talking to Chris about this, but I feel like players, gamblers, bettors, whatever you want to call them, they're no longer concerned about getting the spread or being knowledgeable about money line and what a minus means and what a plus means. They just care if Tom Brady's going to throw 2 touchdowns or whatever the case is. They're so much more focused on the player achieving things, just like they have in fantasy football. Now it translates to the betting side of things. Are you seeing that shift in money go towards player props and not just the outcome of the game itself?
Yeah, so that's been a huge trend we've seen, really in the last 6 to 9 months. And a lot of it is brought on by the technology. For DraftKings and FanDuel to essentially being able to offer, to your point, Tom Brady or not anymore, throwing the touchdown or, player X, Y, or Z doing, certain things. That's been more of a recent trend because you have to be able to offer the end consumer that, but also be able to effectively price these bets. And we always see you go online or you go on Twitter or now X and people talking about, pricing and you're not getting the best lines for certain books. But at the end of the day, that's a small pool of the overall betting pool. The majority and the average consumer just doesn't maybe necessarily care about line shopping or, who's giving the best odds for player X to score 2 touchdowns on a given NFL Sunday. So that's been a lot of it, is being able to bring the consumer or the bettor all of these betting options. And that's why FanDuel and DraftKings have done so well. And that's why they have, over 75% of the sports betting market share in this country, because they were able to bring it to the end consumer. They were able to effectively price lines. They have trading and risk management and, to your point, AI to help them, get the best outcome for themselves while also giving the end consumer kind of the product that they want. So, kind of going back to how do you maximize revenue? You give people what they want. People want to stay on your platform longer. And that's what's going to help, a FanDuel and a DraftKings continue to grow revenue at around 20 or 30 or 40% for the next couple of years.
Look, it's in my DNA to make sure I get the best price. So whether it's on a t-shirt or a line out there or a prop bet, I want to make sure that I've got what I believe might be odds in my favor until, of course, the outcome itself happens. Last question for you before you go. You have the traditional casinos and resorts out there before this boom of sports betting, before this boom of player props and the props in game as well, such as heads or tails or who's going to win the toss or score the first bucket. How are they adapting? And do you think it's going to be through an M&A route? Are there any stocks out there that you like that you're able to comment on? We'd love some insights here before you go.
Yeah, and when we got PASPA repealed, or when the Supreme Court said we can now legalize on a state level sports betting and iGaming, that was kind of the original thought, was you have an MGM Resorts or a Caesars with databases of 30 up to 60 million people, and inherently you would think, okay, you have a database of 60 million people, maybe gambling minded, maybe like sports, you can cross sell them into sports betting, and you can cross sell them to iGaming. And that's actually been a big theme. Those two companies in particular are, companies maybe 3 and 4 after DraftKings and FanDuel, and it's worked to convert those casino players. It's worked a lot better on the iGaming side. So, you go in the casino, you find your favorite slot machine. You can also find it online now. So it's worked a lot better cross-selling those players when it's not necessarily the same demographic from what we've learned of, this 65-year-old female slot player in a casino doesn't necessarily like sports betting. That's more of, let's just call it a mid-30s male type of demographic. So in a way, it has worked, and we like MGM Resorts for that reason. It's ticker MGM, because they've been effectively able to cross-sell into their iGaming, and that has been a very profitable segment for them. It helped them grow revenue quite a bit over the last couple of years, where maybe it hasn't worked so well on the sports betting side. That's why you have DraftKings and FanDuel winning. They had the fantasy database, and they were effectively able to cross-sell those players into the right kind of platform.
Yeah, technology has definitely gone through. Like, I'm here in Georgia, so I can't sports bet. But before, back in the day, the lottery, you had to go in a gas station, convenience stores, or available party, pay cash, then you got your ticket for the Mega Millions. Now I can do it through an app, the Georgia Lottery app, where I can deposit funds through PayPal and then, buy my retirement hopes and dreams. Hopefully one day come true. But that is Jordan Bender. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Hope you guys got some insights, especially in the sports betting world. We've got another great guest coming up, someone that I've personally worked with, and I'm excited to have him join me. A little bit of a different cadence for this interview here. Please help me welcome Ryan Johnson, who is the founder and CEO of Community. Ryan, welcome to the show. Let me see if we can go ahead and take care of Ryan's video. Ryan, if you can go backstage and take care of that with our producer, that would be great. But, chat, let me know what do you guys think, right? Are you someone who bets not just on the games themselves, but also like player props? That's kind of been part of the conversation as well. Give me a 1 in the chat if you go ahead and bet on the player props. Give me a 2 if you only bet on like spreads or money line. I'm curious to see what our viewers at home kind of partake in and participate in. That would be some good insights for us to have. And I can go ahead and bring on my man, Chris, one more time. Chris, you're based in the Detroit-ish area. I know you're a couple of hours away. You're rooting for anybody in these playoffs, for whether it's NBA or whether it's NHL?
NBA, I feel like I've been rooting for the Pacers. I don't know why.
You go in the back. Nope, you're done. Nope. No, I'm kidding. I'm a big Knicks fan. I've been a Knicks fan since Latrell Sprewell back in, what is that, the 1990s, I believe. Patrick Ewing obviously as well. But Pacers, I mean, what are they, down 3-2 or are they up
down 3-2? Yeah. So one of our Benzinga writers, Adam, he lives in Indiana. He's a big Pacers fan. So I've kind of been rooting for them, alongside him. My team, of course, is the Pistons, and we won't talk about how the Pistons did this year.
Did this year, but you couldn't even win the lottery.
Couldn't even win the lottery. That's how bad we are. 5th pick again. NHL, I'm a Red Wings fan. I'm kind of rooting for Edmonton to win. It has been like 30 years since a team from Canada has won. I mean, let's face it, hockey is Canada's sport, and they dominated the Stanley Cup for years, and now they haven't. And Connor McDavid is, the best player in hockey. I'd like to see him get at least a Stanley Cup during his career.
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow hockey that closely, except when I know the Las Vegas Knights had joined their inaugural season. They went all the way to the finals, I believe, but they lost.
Yep.
Right. And then they won the next year, right? Or was it a couple years after?
It was either second or third year. It was one of the quickest wins ever for an expansion team as far as championships. So that was kind of cool to see. And, and I got to admit, Zunaid, I watched some WNBA the other night too, and definitely bet on that game. So might have a new sport to bet on during the season.
I was so close to flying to Indiana to watch Indiana Fever play, and then to spend a night to watch the Pacers play as well. So
back to back,
we would have loved to. That would have been great, but then responsibilities, adulthood, something like that. I don't know.
Work, what's that?
Yeah, I might have to figure it out. I don't know. We might have to see what schedule it has. I know our man Jason has great hookups when it comes to the Pistons as well, so maybe we can take advantage of that. But I know in the chat someone had a question about betting ETF, and I know you mentioned it before as well, but if you could go ahead and give us some insights on, is there a gambling company ETF, asks David Lynn.
Yeah, so Roundhill launched the first sports betting ETF a couple years ago. They were pretty early to the market. BETZ is the ticker. I think there is another sports betting ETF now, but again, Roundhill, they were first to market. But really, it's just a personal preference thing. And if you look at the holdings, you can kind of see, I like the exposure, obviously, to DraftKings, Flutter, and MGM. They're the big three. I think they're going to be the big three for a while. I know you had a couple analysts on today. I liked hearing, the background on the physical side of casinos too. Because that's one of the elements, right? Is, like Penn just reported, right? Penn Entertainment. And their ESPN bet segment didn't do as well as anticipated, but their casino segment did well. So kind of an offset there, and they're able to spend that money to grow their interactive business. So I kind of like that element as well.
Yeah, no question about it. Again, diversification is key. So if you believe in the industry, you're not sure which companies, because you have a tough time like me reading financials and things like that, but you believe in where the space itself is going. I remember years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago, I told a friend of mine about how one day we will see ESPN talk about the lines. And they were always like, no, it's frowned upon, it's taboo, the regulations and this and that. And now you've got sponsorships, right? You literally have a sports book in Detroit, less than 2 miles away from our headquarters, ESPN Bet at Hollywood Casino. So, and this is still just the beginning, in my opinion as well. We've got a couple more guests coming on here. But Chris, anything else that's happening in this space, or anything else that you feel like folks should be aware of, whether it's in terms of stocks, whether it's in terms of trends, anything like that that's on your mind before we move on?
No, I think it's just a great time. Like you said, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, like I said, the NFL schedule just came out. And I mean, it's May. We're months away from the NFL season, but it's going to come up fast, right? I mean, the schedule came out, preseason starts in August. We got training camp starting soon. Like, it's an exciting time. There's lots of different sports to bet on. And like you said, right, you don't just have to bet on the game or the spread, right? You can bet on player props. We got Betr Picks now where you can, try to hit kind of like a parlay, right? Where you try to combine a couple players all hitting a certain number of points, right? So that's what I've been doing in the NBA playoffs, right? Is, Tyrese Halliburton's going to get 20 points. He's going to have 10 assists. Miles Turner is going to have 15 points, and, just trying to combo all those things to hit it big. And, so I think there's lots of options out there as long as everyone's responsible and careful. And on the stock side, again, I think DraftKings, Flutter, and MGM are the key players. But I think some of these casino companies like a Caesars and a Penn, also have an opportunity to hit some niche markets. Or, like I said, maybe there's some more M&A activity coming. So we'll see.
We surely will. Thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. By the way, next up, we've got Greg Selko, who is the CEO of XSET. XSET is a gaming and entertainment company. They are also involved in the Saudi Arabia Saudi Arabia tournament, the 6.5 million one that I teased at the beginning of this webinar. So keep an eye on this one. Now, this was a recorded interview, so you're going to see me change my shirt. Here is Greg Selko, CEO of XSET. Often we talk to executives from publicly traded companies, but now we get to do things a little bit different. We've talked to this gentleman last year, and we had to go and bring him on because they're doing some really cool stuff in the gaming and entertainment field as well. Please help me welcome Greg Selko, who is the CEO of XSET. Greg, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Good to be here another year.
Absolutely. And I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate you making the time. Now, I got to say, the reason that I'm wearing this jacket, just so my CEO doesn't fire me, is because you had to rep the set. So I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. But for the folks at home who might not be familiar with the company, give us a quick brief overview of what is it that you guys do?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, obviously we have the best merch, and you should be a model on the site for sure. We'll have to talk about that after the interview. But XSET is a gaming lifestyle media company. We'll be 4 years old in July. Hard to believe. We're not primarily focused on esports, although we dabble in esports. Our main focus is really on, where gaming intersects with music, fashion, art, and entertainment. We're pretty well known for our events. We're very well known for our merchandise. We've got some new stuff coming. We just launched a new website. And we're really going to be doing a lot of content. We're developing shows with Chris London and Cash Nasty and Clicks and T Grizzly. And the Queens and Avery and a bunch of other of our creators. We're going to be actually developing even more content vehicles for them and launching them over the second half of the year.
Awesome. And look, I've got this, I've got the hoodie,
Nice.
I've gained some weight.
Man. I love it.
Yeah, I've gained some weight, so we'll have to update my wardrobe later on. But
you and me both.
Let's talk about the signings, right? Because when I talked to you last year, you had T Grizzly, you had Ezekiel Elliott, big names in the sports field that obviously gained quite a bit as well. And then you just mentioned Clicks and the Queens Collective. Let's dive into Clicks first. What's the game plan there? How is that going to help with the vision that XSET has?
Yeah, so, obviously Zeke and T Grizzly are still with us. We're continuing to grow. I think we're pretty bullish on Fortnite. I think Fortnite is the game that kind of feels the most lifestyle in terms of like the crossover. I think there's a lot of creativity with the maps. I mean, Clix is just a force of nature, man. He's 19 years old, super smart guy. Like has his own clothing line called Dreamin', which does north of $1 million a year. We're helping him with that. We're doing maps with him. He's a star, and to us, he kind of fit where we want to take XSET. And we were fortunate enough to get him. I think everyone wanted him to come. I don't know if a lot of people have seen the movie Air, but we kind of felt like we were Nike trying to get him, and he made the right choice. And because of that, we have a deeper relationship than I think he would have if he had signed to someone else. And that deepening relationship means that he's also a co-owner, and he's really helpful at the table. Even when as we recruit, we're going to be announcing 4 new Fortnite talent. We can talk about that a little bit more, handpicked by Clix. So he was a great addition to the team, and I think we're just ramping up where we're going to be with him.
Well, let's stick to the Fortnite topic because, yeah, I mean, anyone from the age of 7, my nephew and nieces that kick my behind in the game, to anyone even older than them, is Fortnite's definitely here to stay, no question, with the maps and everything else that they get involved in. So staying on that topic with Clix, I know you can't exactly tell me the players and the teammates that'll be joining, but tell me kind of what you look for when you're looking for members to join the XSET family. What are some things that you want to make sure you have on the table?
Yeah, so I think for us, and there's going to be a lot more activity as we work on the content side. But for us, we don't have an archetype, right? Like we're all over the map in terms of, race, background, male, female. We're not, diversity is part of our, kind of DNA. It's not engineered. It just is, it happens. And that's just because we want to build a collective of folks that have a little something different than everyone else. And I think Clix has just got that winning, attitude. I think someone like Cash Nasty, he loves a lot of other things besides gaming, cooking. We're developing a cooking show. I'm letting the cat out of the bag there. Weightlifting. And he also loves 2K, of course. And so it's that multi-faceted personality that, they touch gaming, but they also have a lot of other things. And we kind of, we do a lot of actually live events. We've done stuff with the Red Sox at the NFL and, nightclubs, and we're doing Breakaway Music Festival, which is going to be really big. We're doing Complex Con. And part of it is like, we want people who love gaming, but they also love to engage with the world.
Yeah, we'll talk about, I've seen Cash and he's worked with 2K quite a bit, something I'm familiar with, and also his obsession with LeBron. That's always fun and entertaining to watch. Let's talk about Queens Collective, because I think that's like an important initiative that's happening. And one thing that I'll note is that it's not that you were kind of looking for this, but it's that these are amazing creators, as these are amazing individuals who happen to be women in this space that you're a part of. Would I be right in that?
Yeah, you'd be right. And I think for us, there's 3 billion people that game. 45% of them are women. It may even be higher now. And it's just amazing to me how little, maybe our peers or competitors or whatever you want to call them really even focus beyond this very narrow view of what like a gamer or esport athlete is. So to us, the Queens was really, it had been around for about a year and a half before we bought them. We've done a lot of sort of reimagining. We did a clothing drop with them. We did the clothing drop with Ali Long, who's a super famous female soccer player. And we're really trying to figure out, how do we continue to build on that? Recruiting some more women to be part of the Queens, building stuff where the Queens are interacting with each other, and kind of continue to put out merchandise. And ultimately, we want to create a content series that focuses on the relationship with the Queens. That's not the only thing we do with women. Avery is a huge creator for XSET. Demi Sucks is also a big creator. She's part of Queens, right? So everyone interacts, and it just seemed like a good fit to acquire them. And, we are continuing to build on that.
Yeah, and I know I've followed Erin Ashley Simon quite a bit, and how big of an advocate she is to make sure that minorities are representing the space, a space that, like you said, is quite dominant or has a bigger percentage of gamers, but may not be represented on the table itself. Let's talk about the $6.5 million tournament that is happening in Saudi Arabia. How is XSET going to be a part of that?
Yeah, so we're one of the 8 partners for Fortnite. We're fielding a team. I think it's a damn good team. Clicks is the sort of the face and the coach and the streaming. And, you know, as we think about like media and content, you know, we think there's a ton of stories around this team and interesting thing. We're going to deck them out in like really dope outfits and just be XSET, like totally different than what you'd expect. And we're thinking maybe not even jerseys. We're trying to think of something like really weird and but cool, but maybe they're jerseys. But I think the bottom line is like they fit us, you know, in terms of personality. Click sort of handpicked them. I think he's very excited about it. He'll be there. He's not competing, but he'll be there. He certainly could step in as an alternate if that were necessary. But, you know, I think, you know, we're really kind of building up, you know, we'd like to, you know, in talking with ESL, and they've been really great to talk with and to support us. And they really kind of sought us out and said, well, you guys got to be involved, especially with Clicks, is how do we not only bring a really good team, but we help bring some of the media and streaming and sort of hype around the activities and then also the main competition.
Yeah, I actually reached out to ESL because I did their FIBA tournament in Sweden. So I'm like, hey, you need a broadcaster? Let me know. So maybe I'll see you there in Saudi Arabia. Last thing for me is, you know, what's in the pipeline? I know you kind of teased Fortnite. I know you kind of teased a couple of things that are coming up as well. What's something else that you guys are working on that folks at home should be aware of?
Well, first of all, and this is the first time I've said this because we haven't announced the date, but this month on the 23rd, we're going to be dropping a big Clicks XSET clothing drop. We shot some really cool content. The guy who directed is a guy named Show Me, who normally directs music videos. He's done music videos for Beyonce and ASAP Rocky and all sorts of different, you know, the Weeknd. And so we shot a really kind of cool, like elevated, funny video around car racing and the launch. And obviously Clicks is the star. So that's on the 23rd. We're also dropping 2 maps this month in Fortnite. The first is a collaborative map with Death Row Gaming, which is, you know, Snoop and Snoop's son's gaming group, and with T Grizzly as well. And then hopefully Clicks will make a little cameo. We'll see what happens. And then at the end of the month, we're dropping a map with just Clicks and XSET. So we're super bullish on the maps. I think we have some cool ideas and some ways of doing it. I think will break through. That will be different. But yeah, and we're going to be offering a big prize pool, right? So that always helps too, right?
Yeah.
So everyone likes money. But yeah, no. And then in June, we're doing a big event with Cascade, the DJ. Loves the game. Clicks and Cascade are going to be gaming. We're going to be dropping a clothing line with Cascade. With a little bit of gaming influence, but mostly just like a cool fashion XSET Cascade. You know, he's one of the biggest DJs in the world. We also have another DJ that's sort of up and coming that we'll talk about at some point. But, you know, we're super, super busy. And we try to activate around different events, whether it's DreamHack or, you know, we call them our 10-pole events. So we look across the calendar for the year at like where the cultural moments that only XSET could be, our competitors just wouldn't make sense to be there. And then we build some kind of activation, maybe a clothing drop around it and some content. So, yeah, we're going to be launching, you know, hopefully 5 content series this year.
That's awesome. One thing that I really love, and you've kind of demonstrated it here in this conversation, is you get it in the sense of we are in a creator economy where the influencers have such a bigger reach, good influencers with good intentions. Not everybody's made equal. And you guys are able to utilize them in a way that works with your vision as well, right? The way that you're doing things with Queen's Collective, the way that you're doing things with Clicks and all the other creators that you've worked with in the past. And you kind of have that ownership, giving them the ownership as well. I think that works great for y'all. And I'm excited to see what comes through. Any final thoughts from you before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we're going to be 4 years old in July. Time went quickly. There was a lot of figuring out and tinkering and, you know, just staying alive through the various challenges that we've all had, you know, with starting in the middle of COVID and having, you know, tough fundraising environment. But I really feel like in the last year, we're just hitting our stride. So I think we really feel like the next 6 months are going to be a pivotal, you know, breakout kind of 6 months or 8 months for XSET. And I think everyone's going to be shocked, surprised, and excited by all the different things that we are doing. And yeah, we're going to keep growing. We got some other celebrity folks that are investors and also will be announcing as part of the XSET family.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. And if you heard my Slack going off, it's my producer saying, I heard breakaway, score me some tickets. So I'm sure we'll be in touch.
We got you, man. We got you. We can easily get you the tickets you need. Don't worry about it.
You are awesome. Love XSET for so many reasons and more so after this interview. Greg, thank you so much for your time, man. Really looking forward to working with you guys in the future, and best of luck in Saudi Arabia and with everything else that you've got going on as well.
Thank you.
That was Greg Selko, who is the CEO of XSET. All right. You got to love what's happening in the esports space. And thank you again to Greg for his time yesterday so we could go ahead and get some insights from XSET, the great things that they're doing. Keep an eye. He dropped some gems in there in terms of breaking news and different things like that. So, you, the viewer at home, got some insights there. Let's go ahead and bring back Ryan Johnson, who is the founder and CEO of Community. Ryan, what's going on, my man?
Yo, what's going on, man? It's great to catch up in a different form, to your point.
I almost just went ahead and changed my name to India, but I've got the handle on the bottom, so it's good to have that. But obviously, I'm very familiar with you guys, right? I got a chance to broadcast 2K, Madden, Rocket League for y'all, but for the folks at home, it's so much bigger than that. Give them a little bit of insight of what is it that Community does.
Yeah. So, and again, just really excited to be here. For everyone, my name is Ryan Johnson, founder, CEO of Community Media. Our company's mission is around connecting diverse audiences to brands and agencies through gaming and anime. We started our company a few years ago when we learned that 83% of African-American youth play video games on a weekly basis. But out of the $200 billion industry, only 4% of that industry represents African-American. So for us, we set out to really create programs, projects, and also platforms that allow people of color across the gaming ecosystem to feel seen and heard and really have a seat at the table. And we've done that primarily by launching 3 core IPs within Community Media. So how we know Zunaid India, right, is he's one of our host casters for the HBCU Esports League, which is our flagship program. We have another live experience series called The Kickback, where we do gaming and concert series with brands like Spotify, artists like NLE Choppa, and just bringing different gaming influencers. And then lastly, what I think is going to be one of our most exciting brands is Trap Sushi, which is really bringing together the worlds of hip hop and anime through live experiences that we host every month in Atlanta. And right now we're averaging about 1,500 people a month come out to these different Trap Sushi experiences that we host. So across the board, man, that is really how we're creating different opportunities for folks to get involved through the lens of just like multicultural within the gaming space.
And I know Keats did it, another host of HBCU. He went out to Japan, I believe, with Trap Sushi. So I know they got a chance to kick it up there a bit as well. You got a chance to go to the White House a little bit a while ago as well. So you want to talk about having a seat at the table. You clearly have a seat at the table. Give me what was the conversation like at the White House? And then we'll dive into the other things here in a minute.
For sure. So I think it was like last April, the VP, Kamala Harris, she invited 50 emerging Black-owned businesses in North America just to come have a conversation about some of the challenges, economic barriers, corporate barriers that exist of what makes it hard for Black-owned businesses to grow and scale. A lot of it has to do with literally just lack of access, lack of validation. And so the conversation with the VP, the vice president at the time, was really geared around how can her office and her team be more supportive to Black entrepreneurs, given that Black entrepreneurs are being extremely intentional about hiring diverse talent, recruiting from historically Black colleges and universities. So I'll be honest, that was a very groundbreaking day just to literally be in the room and just be able to share some of our experiences and how we're hoping to grow, right, over time, like the American economy, access for younger students through gaming and media and entertainment.
You mentioned, by the way, I like how you just said VP, just like VP of like any company. It's like, no, it's like the VP. So.
Yeah, like the VP in that scenario. Yeah.
You mentioned the stat about how, 83% of African-Americans, millennials, play the video games and only 4% of them work in the gaming industry itself. This is a mission that you're on to go ahead and close that gap a little bit more as well. So give me insights in terms of how many schools you guys work with, how many scholarship prize money you've been able to give out, how many students and everything else in your ecosystem. If you could provide some insights, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. And So also, I like to take a macro perspective
Sure.
of it, right? Because, the student portion is probably like the smallest part of the larger community that we're working on. But to your point, man, as of right now, when we started the Esports League, and for context, the way HBCU Esports is structured, for those who may be unfamiliar, right? We are a 22-week long collegiate esports and video game season. We do titles like NBA 2K, Madden, Call of Duty, Mortal Kombat. To Zunaid's point, in the last 2 years, we've done over $2 million worth of scholarship prize money. So we have several universities that have earned through their programs over 100. We have like 5 universities that have earned over 6 figures just playing in these various tournaments. When we started, we had 2 universities. I'm sorry, when we started, we had 4 universities in season 1. I believe this past season, we had over 46 universities. When we started, we had like 16 to 20 students. I now know we have over 1,000 students across the ecosystem, and this is continuously growing.
Yeah.
But, that's just through the league perspective, right? And then you look at the kickback, you look at what we're doing with Trap Sushi, and really across the board, what we're positioning ourselves in is being the leader in providing access to brands to have a window into culture, right? I know gaming and culture, you hear these words a lot very synonymously. I just think what we're very bullish about, especially being a diverse owned business that comes from these cultures that a lot of brands within gaming are emulating, or talent that they're acquiring, et cetera, is just staying true and providing like real opportunities and access, and layering on those opportunities to live events. So yeah, man, it's been extremely exciting just the past few years, and just seeing like the amount of opportunity.
Looks like Ryan's internet may have cut out there, but he's absolutely right when he talks about, gaming and culture. Those are things that are quite in tandem with each other as well. Matter of fact, I was going to show off the shoe to him because I got it thanks to our little heat check segment that we do at HBCU to bridge intersection of esports and also gaming itself. But if you're at a HBCU school or you want to get involved, even if you're not, highly recommend Community. You can check them out. You can check them out on Twitter, Instagram, all the socials. And, it's not just the gaming aspect of it. It's also that they help these college students get acclimated and get the insights, the knowledge, and the experience, so that if they want to pursue behind the scenes jobs and careers, they're able to do that as well. So I've worked with many college students who've been on the broadcast with me. I think that's important to do, is to show them that, hey, these are different ways that you can get involved. It's not just being a professional. You could be a producer, you could be a director, you could be a graphic designer, you could be an editor, you can be an on-air talent, and the 90 other responsibilities that go in making this type of production happen. So want to thank Community, want to thank everyone that was on the show here with us. Want to thank Chris, who's been hanging out in the back just in case I need him to go and have a conversation with me. And of course, most importantly, you, the viewer at home. We put this together for you so we can provide you insights, and hopefully we did, and not just what's happening in the stock market world in terms of sports betting, but also with XSET, with Community, and the analysts that came on to provide some insights in the space itself as well. The show, this one ends, but we've got another great one here coming up, and it's going to be with Andrew Left. The GME craze has been insane. Are we dealing now with a part 2 or not? Is it short-lived? Make sure you guys stick around because we're going to redirect to that one. You've also got Luke Jacoby, who doesn't really do a lot of airtime, but he's going to be back with Aaron Bree and Andrew Left as well. And I can't thank you enough for watching this sports betting, gaming, esports, a deep dive webinar. We'll see you next time.